Welcome to Conversations with the USA Race Walking Foundation.
Hi, everybody. This is Jeff Salvage, and I'm here with Ron Daniel, and we have a special talk today for USA Race Walking Foundation. It's a continuation of our series of interviewing candidates who are going to run for USATF Race Walking Chairperson. Ron has an interesting background because he's already been chairperson. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Ron, I wanted to start off and say, you're not just an administrator. You were a fierce competitor back in the heyday of race walking when you had competitors like Ron Laird racking up, I think, still the most national championships of any walker, of any U.S. track and field athlete, right?
Yes.
And you were the bridesmaid, right? Never the bride. You came in second many times, 10 or 11 championships, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
So Ron, you were chairperson from 2012 to 2016, however those dates roll for the actual start, which is an Olympiad, and you've decided that you want to run again. So why don't we start by asking you, why do you want to be chairperson again, and then we'll follow up and ask, what do you think you can accomplish as chairperson in another term?
Well, I've over the last several years, especially just the last 2 or 3 years, myself, along with many others, have noticed there seemed to be a lack of communication from the committee as a whole. Okay. And I know that during my chairmanship, I had a lot of communication. Okay. And in fact, I would forcefully, if you want to call it that, have at least quarterly meetings of the committee, not just the executive committee. So I feel those are things that I accomplished at that time, along with the fact that maybe it was a little bit easier in those days, but we were able to field pretty much full teams. So all the cup races, Pan Am Cup and World Cup at the time, which was called, has been changed to World Team. So, and I think we held actually a very good off-site Olympic trials in 2016. That was the beginning of Olympic trials not being held at the main stadium per se, other than I think that 4 years later, they did it on the track. So there are a variety of things that I think that we were able to accomplish. Among the things, I think I had a pretty good working budget plan, in that one of the things that I offered up was a way in which athletes could accrue a little bit more money if they competed on, say, the World Cup team or the Pan Am Cup team. Just by being on the team, they could earn money. By being first U.S. race walker, earn money, and so on and so forth, all the way up to potentially even setting NACAC records. That seems to have gone away. So I think that was something that was available out there. Now, not often that was really paid off for the athletes, but that was on them, not on me. The money was there.
So what you're saying is you'd like to see an incentive-based system to funding.
Yes. And that's one of the things I put in my proposal. Well, maybe not, but it's something I've been thinking about. We really need to go back to that. I even had prize money for outside of the main championships of the 5K and the 10K. Again, there was a criteria for earning it. It wasn't just there to be at the race, but still, that was there. I haven't seen any of that going on around at all. And I haven't even seen anything such as a Grand Prix happening at all. So there's a whole number of things that you don't see happening now. And it could be just simply from the communication.
Okay, you don't think it's USATF budget cuts?
Well, I don't know what's happened with the budget. That's another thing. I haven't seen a budget in the last 8 years. All right.
Okay.
That's something that I put out within weeks after the annual meeting, because that time frame was when our budget was presented to us, of which I had input into the budget. Okay. So it wasn't just a case they offered it to me. I said, I would like to have this, that, and the other thing, and they would weave it around. And so I would get pretty much what I was asking for. And once I had that all laid out, I presented it to the committee.
I know one of the frustrations with communication, and this probably even dates back to before you, is USATF does not update their website regularly. And that's going to be a challenge for any chairperson. Right.
Well, that's another thing on my list to do, but I'm just talking about our committee sending out the minutes of meetings to our committee. All
Sure.
right? And one of the things, I don't know if you have more questions on that, but that's one of the things I wanted to address.
So we can go down your list of what your agenda items are as future chairperson. Just roll with it. Tell us the kind of things that you want to implement. And I think importantly, right, it's easy to say USATF should pay for this, right? How can we get USATF to pay for this is a key piece of it. And I'm just gonna feed you, because you and I talked before we started recording. You mentioned in 2015 that you had a talk with Max Siegel, and you might explain who that is to the people who are listening, because maybe everybody at home doesn't know that. But explain that conversation and how that might lead to your accomplishing certain tasks.
Okay, that's taking things a little bit out of order, but yes, one of the things that I have here in my procedure I was talking about as a long-term development goal. Okay, I talk about how at the time we started out was that, I'm trying to find my notes on this thing, is that we're looking at other sports groups and such things such as cross-country skiing, cycling, whatever, as a place in which to maybe go and identify athletes. All right, this was all in response to Max Siegel at one of the meetings rather in Indianapolis, where he brought in all the chairs. He pulled me aside and he said, we need to have a separate talk about what USA Track and Field could do for race walking. And that was actually a lead in to the fact that USA Track and Field was going to be hosting the 2022 World Championships. So 2 or 3 days later, I went back through all the things that people have been talking about, what we could be doing and so on and so forth. And I laid that out and I talked to Max about 45 minutes on the phone. He asked me then to put it down in a bullet form, and I did that. So along these things I'm just talking about there, I had also come up with a few other ideas, such as my first proposal was talking about education, media awareness, talent initiative of USA's race walking centers and so forth. And I had actually cleared the way, and I don't want to mention names at the moment, but with 2 of our more prominent at the time coaches in the US about how we could do something like that. And I wanted to be able to introduce them as part of my proposal. They both agreed. They were both excited about it. So it was a continuing process going back and forth between myself and Max. However, along the way, Max came to me at one point. Now certain things have changed within his willing to do stuff, that he now did not have that kind of freedom anymore. So now suddenly I was dumped in the lap of Duffy Mahoney, who did this, that. So it sort of got sidetracked, even up to the point where now I was no longer reelected. So at that point in time, I questioned whether or not I could continue doing that, but I was not getting any help in doing that. So part of what I'm thinking about is going back and looking at some things that are more appropriate now, but similar to what I was suggesting before in terms of a long-term goal, right? But before we could even get to that, even though I have my long-term, short-term goals for development listed first, I should have had listed first is the administration, of which we were just sort of talking about. And among those things that I was noticing that various people I would speak to, they were really pretty disenfranchised with the U.S. Race Walk Committee. They weren't hearing anything about anything that was going on. And I was just wondering about that. So I just went and was looking yesterday at the most recent, I believe, operating procedures for that. Let me read to you on the portion about what the secretary's duty is. The secretary shall record the minutes of all meetings of this committee and of the executive committee. All minutes shall be distributed to members of the executive committee within 15 days. Wait a minute. I had all minutes distributed to the whole committee. Why is this not happening? Maybe that's why we're feeling disenfranchised. We're not getting the information. And similarly, things about the budget. I talked about how I had laid out my budget. Okay. Within a week or so after the annual meeting, I would come out with my budget. I created a scheme for the annual budget, something that I learned, I don't need to go into it here, from my previous employment at Lockheed, is the front page of my annual budget was a summary of the line items in the annual budget, how much was allocated and how much was being spent. Backup pages pretty much went to each one of those line items. I feel that that process did not leave anybody confused as to where the money was going. I haven't seen a budget in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Hold on.
Okay,
You know what I mean? So
hang on one sec. Okay, everybody, we had a brief dog issue there. Took care of the dog. We're back with Ron. Ron, I'm going to hit you with a couple of rapid fire questions here. The first being, everybody in America who cared about race walking had to notice that there were no Olympians in Paris for the first time since there was an Olympic race walk. What, as chairperson, do you think you can do in the next 4 years so that we have at least an Olympian or a team in LA, and then going on to 2032 in Brisbane, having a real presence? Because there was a time where the goal was to have 9 walkers, a full squad at the Olympics, and we never quite reached that.
sure, yeah, I mean, that's always a nice goal. Certainly within the last few years or so, World Athletics has sort of turned the tables on us in a way, and by creating what they call an automatic standard to go to the World Championships or the Olympics, and also minimum number of participants. So when you look at those criteria, that pretty much makes it really very difficult for any of our US athletes at all. So one of the things that I'm suggesting here that I also put into my proposal was in effect that we should maybe select 3 to 5 people, men and women, all right, and to be considered for a program, and which would be a long-standing program, all right? It's not something that I raise my hand. You have to be really committed to doing that in such a way then that those athletes then would be sort of assigned to a particular coach, whether it be a US coach or a foreign coach or whatever, and then they have to be getting usual feedback and so forth, how they're making progress along that way. And in such a way, now, for example, you know, how can we really identify somebody early up if they're even potentially eligible, all right? Could we look and see right now, who do we know that we could think within these next 3.5 years are really potential Olympians, all right? That's going to be a task that I would subscribe to a subcommittee, all right? However, one of the things that I did take a look at, for example, was have my notes here someplace. Yeah. For example, and since I did not look at this in time to see what the last ranking person was in the 20Ks, which was a 48th place position. All right. Now, our good friend Rachel D'Orbita from Puerto Rico. Now, she had a all-time best performance of 131.15. And I remember she's in the high, maybe the high 30s, maybe low 40s position-wise. Okay. So beyond that, then, because I didn't go and check to see who the last place person was, I went back and I said, well, who finished last in the Olympics? Okay, among the men was Bence Veniyir something from Hungary. All right. Now, his best time was a 121.42. All right. Well, in the Olympics, under the conditions and so forth, he was a 129.14. So maybe he wasn't representative of the performance there. But still, his performance time was 121.42. And among the women, Anna Chapechina from Portugal, right, her best time was a 128.49. She finished last with a 146.30, and I'm not sure if she had any red cards and so forth. So those are just performance levels of those people. Now, we don't know what the criteria is going to be in 3 years, whether it's going to stay the same or it's going to improve. But we have to be looking at people that we feel are going to be at least coming close to those kinds of levels of performances. Right?
So the level of performance to qualify for the Olympics was pretty much at or faster than I think the American record.
Yes, in all cases.
So we have to change our game.
Yes.
In order to have people, Trevor Barron was the last potential person who wouldn't just make the Olympics but could do well at the Olympics, right? Not disrespecting anybody, but
sure, yeah.
we haven't had anyone come through. It's, hey, I'm an Olympian. That's a great accomplishment. Now the next question is, and we didn't even talk about this, but how do you get to someone being in the top 10 or on the podium? right? And that's not
Yeah,
even something
right. And
we usually
so
dream about.
while I sort of outlined the idea of choosing 3 to 5 women and 3 to 5 men as potentials for this, right? It's one thing to name names. It's another thing to be able to fund it, because we pretty much can't ask an athlete to become a pretty much full-time professional athlete for the next 3.5 years without some sort of funding.
So how
In
do
a
we
sense,
fund it?
yeah, well, yeah, in a sense, this has always been the case in the past. Whenever the US is doing this kind of an event, they seem to go out of their way for a particular sport group, as well as the US Olympic Committee. They seem to always be willing to put in a little bit more money. So I think in that case, we have to have a good plan laid out, be able to go to Max Siegel in this case, and or whoever the new president is of USA Track and Field, say, look, if we really want to have anybody at the starting line in 2028 in LA, this is the plan that we need to follow. And in order to do this, it's going to cost some money. And I think in a subcommittee, whether I'm on it or not, it doesn't necessarily have to be the chairperson, right, needs to be able to go through in detail and lay it out and say, here's what we expect it to cost. At the same time, we have to be very judicious about picking the people. We can't have people that simply say, yeah, I'm willing to do it for a year or so, and then they quit.
Of course.
They chewed up some money.
So do you think USATF will support an effort to create Olympians or to create medalists? Because what I've always heard is USATF is there to create medalists.
Well, that's a conversation we would need to have. And this goes back to my conversation in 2015 with Max Siegel, right? If at that time he was willing to listen to me, although it never got to fruition, even though along the way, I was also creating a cost estimate to everything. And in fact, over my first 2 years, and I don't know the details of what I was doing over the first 2 years, but I came up with a cost estimate of like $270-something thousand. Now, somebody might say that's pretty outrageous, but the question was, what can I do for you? So I'm not going to say.
I think it's naive to think that you can do anything that isn't in the neighborhood of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Sure.
Right. So I mean,
So yeah. So either somebody's got to win the grand prize of the lottery and just donate it all, or whatever. So I'm just thinking, just in those particular areas alone, that becomes a challenge. That becomes
absolutely.
a challenge. This is what I was calling my short range goal. All right, short range development. All right, as opposed to the other one, which starts like the other things, investigating, finding people outside of track and field and race walking.
Let's shift gears to that question, which is, how do we get youth and other athletes to join our small pool of race walkers?
Well, we do have our own program, as much as it seems to be floundering in some ways, because again, and I hate to harp on the fact that without it being more so in all of our high schools, and it's got to be more than just the NAIA and or some way within the NAIA to be fostering them to go on to competing at longer distances, some way along those ways. And as you're doing all these things, as one of my suggestion was, being able to pick again some people that's showing a lot of promise, being able to offer them an opportunity to go to some sort of a residency program within, say, any one of our US coaches if they so choose. And this is separate from the goal for the short range goal for the Olympians,
sure.
Although a lot of it would overlap. But we're talking about a long-term goal, right? So it's not like
absolutely.
within 2 years we're going to have people there. We're trying to pick them up as their youth and so on and so forth. And I was even suggesting, while it may be a little bit difficult to do, but again, maybe have something again like the old US Olympic Festival, which brought together people from different areas of the US based on where they went to high school, not where they're currently living, and an opportunity to get some competition going so that they're having those opportunities there. So behind all of this, of course, is our cup teams. And that was a whole different discussion that I tried to have as chair, that we needed to really improve the criteria for making these cup teams. And I got sort of shouted down that, well, we can't do that. That'd be ruining the sport by forcing the athletes to be actually better, So we have to do something like that. There's just no way in which we keep just having people go on teams.
You would support stricter standards for making international
Oh,
teams.
absolutely. Yeah, and
Okay.
of course, the Olympics and World Championships, that's a whole other
So
ball of wax.
I meant to correct you on something. So you are correct when you said that World Athletics instituted automatic standards for athletes, and those standards were very stiff for a number of reasons. But the limit on the number of athletes, I do not believe came from World Athletics or from the Olympics themselves. There has been a movement to reduce the number of athletes per event across all sports, not just race walking.
Oh, well, that's even making life even more difficult.
Yeah, no,
And
it is. And that's, I used to have opinions of the marathon relay before I sort of got into a certain circle where I heard more. And, how do you have men and women represented without having more beds in the Olympic Village? And the marathon relay fills that rather nicely because almost everybody doubled. And then you were just filling in a few extra people, right?
yeah,
So it gave us two events. I thought an exciting event, the way it rolled out at the Olympic Games in Paris. Not the traditional 50K that you and I grew up on and we love, but times change and there are reasons that we don't always know about that people are doing things. So
yeah.
with that said, I don't want this to go on too long. So I'm going to give you
Well,
a couple minutes just to say anything else you want to say to the people who are voting about what you would want to do and your candidate.
well, yeah, even following on to this recent discussion here about the qualifications and criteria for making the DARES teams. One of the things that now with USA Track and Field is basically the strongest track and field team in the world. So in which we have our Olympic trials and we have our World Championship trials. These are pretty much set in stone. If you don't go to that, you don't make a team, right? That's unfortunate for race walking because during the course of a year, we only have a limited number of opportunities to go after that World Athletics automatic standard and or be gaining points on the performance list. So one of the things I would like to see is that we have to have a way in which we can create our own championship schedule such that it does not interfere with, say, in Europe, they have a gold tour, a silver tour, a bronze tour. Fantastic opportunities for some of our faster people to go and get better performances at, right? To increase their chances of making any of these teams. So, and we need to be able to have a way in which we can, I guess, suggest to USA Track and Field that that's all winner take all at Olympic trials is not necessarily working in the favor of race walking. And I should have gone and looked to see. I know that the marathon run, for example, is not really under the same criteria. We need to be able to pull something out so that we have a different way in which we want to determine who should be going to these championships. That's something I would really like to be working towards. So that I think is very, very important. So, along with the other qualification criteria that we need to improve on. So, again, I'm going to start to be repeating myself here, even though a lot of other things that I had on my original list.
I'll add a comment to say that the debate on whether or not you should be required to compete at, say, an Olympic trials, or whether you even have to, show up or what that meet means is not unique to race walking. It's not unique to the US. As I've traveled around as an official, I've heard the same arguments being made in other countries. The problem is we are an event of track and field. And if we alienate ourselves off to the side, there is a risk, right, that people don't care.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying alienate ourselves, but the general information as I follow the marathons, for example, they do not fall under that same sort of criteria per se. But the mere fact that we could potentially have people getting like the automatic standard and then be forced to go to an Olympic trial, of which then maybe that gets negated. So, and years ago, under my tutelage as chair, we had a way in which, for example, to make it to one of the World Cups or Pan Am Cup teams, that you did not have to be in that particular trial, okay? If you had the ranking to show that you were deserving of being on that particular team. something along those lines, I think would be very valuable in terms of enhancing our ability. All right, still we have to find the athletes.
Sure,
And
of course.
that's the core choice here. The short-term goal, how do we find these athletes? It's not going to be easy. You can always think of our mind, who do we think could make it possibly be in? All right, maybe even Taylor Ewart. I hear rumblings about maybe she's ready to come back to racing. She was certainly a
We're all
talent.
hoping. We're all
Yeah.
hoping she comes
Well,
back. So,
she was like a Trevor Barron, right?
yep.
She was way up there, and all of a sudden something went on. I'm not sure what.
Well,
But anyway,
Taylor
that's a whole
got
different discussion.
Taylor got a scholarship to run at an elite running school. You know, that
Sure.
it's not fair to compare her to Trevor, other than they both left the sport prematurely.
But
So,
anyway, yeah, but she
all right.
was definitely a potential. If she comes back, maybe she could be on that list. Who knows?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
So,
why don't we end on that note? Ron, I wish you the best of luck. I stay away from the convention. I've never gone to a convention.
oh, okay. I was hoping to see you there.
No, I try to be apolitical. I'm happy to do these kind of interviews for all the candidates. You're all my friends, you know, so I wish you the best of luck. And if you win, you can come back and we can have a communication over video and post it on YouTube every quarter. And if not, you could be the kvetching gentleman who says, "Hey, this is how we need to improve our sport."
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening or good